Hello, moms and dads, and welcome to your digestion issues and constipation webinar. This is for you if you have a newborn baby at home, maybe that infant that is struggling, a toddler, or even an older kiddo, and you've been looking for answers, you've been frustrated, you've been exhausted, you're wondering where to turn next. And if you're an adult watching this webinar, just so you know, this is going to apply to you as well, because we're going to talk about how digestion is supposed to work and what might be preventing it from working optimally, whether you are a newborn baby or whether you are a full-grown adult. If you don't know me, my name is Dr. Ty. I own Whole Family Chiropractic, and we specialize in helping families and kiddos get to the root of their health issues, and that's why I'm passionate about sharing this information with you. I remember back when my baby son was born, and there was a stretch where he had some constipation happening, and my wife and I, we had moments of being scared, like, hey, as a new parent, is this the way it's supposed to be? We had moments of looking up all different options, and we had moments of kind of being exhausted and frustrated of like, hey, what do we need to do here? And after getting through those moments, now our son poops like a champ. He digests his food really well. He can eat a good variety of foods, and I want to share with you, if you are a parent in those situations, what you can do to help your kiddo as well. So today we're going to talk about how digestion is supposed to work. We're going to talk about a couple of the factors that can be interfering with things and throwing your kiddo off, and then how we help in our office if that feels like, as we talk today, if something kind of clicks for you, to know that you can reach out and get some help for your kiddo in a very safe and gentle way, in a holistic way as well. So what we're going to talk about first is how digestion is supposed to work. There are actually 3 layers. We're going to jump here. So when we bring food into our body, we know that, number one, it has to come in the mouth and down the esophagus. This is what we consider the first layer, or the upper layer of digestion. If something is off here, a lot of times you might notice a lot of reflux or heartburn or spitting up. Maybe your kiddo as an infant did have a lot of spit up, a lot of reflux, and now they're a little bit older and you don't notice that symptom as much, but you feel still this chain and their digestion is off. That is often in this upper floor of digestion. What happens is when food then gets down through that upper floor, it enters the stomach here. And the stomach is the key to this middle layer, which is breaking it down and moving it on. If we think of kind of like an assembly line, first we got to get it in. Second, we've got to break it down, and the stomach releases all different acids depending on whether you ingested a carbohydrate or a protein or a fat, different acids, different digestive enzymes to really help start that breakdown process. And then the stomach has to move it on to the intestine. So before we get to that lower floor, if we're seeing an issue in that middle floor, a lot of times that's where you might notice you or your kiddo, you get some indigestion, maybe stomach pain, sore here, or even like burping. And a lot of times those symptoms might come on more quickly after eating, as opposed to something longer after eating. The third floor then, as we move our way down, is where the intestine comes into play. So the stomach empties into the small intestine, and as food passes through the small intestine, then eventually it gets to the large intestine, where it moves on out of the body. So the goal of this lower floor is to absorb things and eliminate them. What that means is your body's bringing in all the nutrients, or your kiddo's body, they're absorbing the different minerals, the different vitamins, they're still absorbing the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats, all the things that they need to be growing big and strong. I know for my own son, there was a stretch where we were wondering, like, okay, is he not pooping because he's not getting enough food into his body in the first place? And obviously, as a new parent, we want that happening because we want our kiddos growing big and strong, and the absorption of the food happens in this lower floor. So super important, because it doesn't just matter what comes in the body, it actually also matters what gets absorbed by the body, and that's this lower floor here. So if we see issues down here, because that's later in digestion, like I said, it might be a little bit longer after a meal, get bloaty, gassy, constipation, diarrhea, The effects on the bowel movements are more common here, as well as kind of things just feel maybe stagnant or upset afterwards. So, with the three different floors, what we want to look at then is what could be influencing each one. So, what I want to talk about is the two main things that could be influencing the digestive floors then and what you can do about it. So, the first category that we see parents a lot of times, if they've come to us, they've already looked into, already addressed, is on the food allergy standpoint or the food sensitivity. And there can be a big difference there. For example, recently we had a dad with his 3-year-old daughter, and he said, I was wondering if she was reacting to gluten. So we tested her, and she showed up that she didn't have celiac. And as an example there is that means like celiac is testing for a big food allergy, but there's also food sensitivities. And years ago, I know myself, I had a blood test done, and things like carrots showed up, or pears, or lettuce showed up as something my body, it wasn't allergic to, but it had a little bit of a reaction to, created a little inflammatory response in my body. And there are foods that I wouldn't have guessed. So in the food sensitivity category, if something is off there, then that will absolutely affect digestion. And in this case, what clues you might be looking for are maybe there's puffy, baggy eyes. Maybe there's kind of like those little shadows under your kiddo's eyes. They look congested or swelling. Maybe there's skin issues. Maybe the constipation diarrhea can also show up in this category, but it's often accompanied by some of those other things. Before I met my wife, she had to be gluten-free because she noticed if she ate gluten, she would become very anxious afterwards. So sometimes food reactions can create sensitivities in the body and the mind as well. So that's one category that's going to influence digestion. And the good news is that whether you're a kiddo or an adult, your body can get beyond those things and be able to heal from them. This is something that we don't do in our office, but we have really great referral sources that if you're interested in what tests we recommend or who we recommend, we have other practitioners that we absolutely refer to be able to check your kiddo or yourself out to see if that's a category of concern. The thing then is, let's say you have tried different foods and not really noticed a change, or maybe saying, you know what, I don't want to have to be like so strict with my kiddo. That's just not realistic. What else might be affecting digestion? And that's the second piece that we focus on in our office that we do is going into the nervous system. So what we see here is that the brain and the body, or the brain controls everything in the body. And to give you an example, let's pretend you took your own stomach, just for example, out of your body and you put some oatmeal in it, or you put some apples in it, or you put a steak in it. What would happen to that food? Nothing, right? It wouldn't digest, because just by putting food in the stomach, if that stomach's not connected to you and your life force and your brain, your nervous system, your blood flow, all these other pieces, it's not going to do any digesting. So if we kind of back that up and say, well, what if your brain, let's say it's not disconnected from your stomach. So we've got our stomach here. Let's say it's not disconnected, but what if your brain isn't able to get clear nerve signals down to your stomach? What would happen then? So we look here, we know the brain sends messages down the spine, and it's actually this group of nerves here that carry those messages to the stomach. And that's that middle floor. If we go down lower, we have, as I mentioned, the small intestine, the large intestine. There's also things like the gallbladder, the pancreas, that provide digestive enzymes to help break food down that are important with digestion. If we go into this intestine section, we notice that, these nerves down here, as an example, go to the large intestine. There's also these nerves here that go up into the large intestine. So the key with this is that in order for digestion to work properly, you need good connection to your brain and your nervous system. The digestive organs don't work on their own, and they especially don't coordinate and sync up on their own. So I will show you what this means here on a separate chart in just a moment. The other big piece with digestion is this nerve in green that comes from the brainstem. You'll see it coming down along here. It actually goes in to the stomach, and if you can follow, depending on the resolution of your screen here, it goes all the way down into the intestine as well. That nerve, if you've heard of it, is called the vagus nerve. So those are the key neurological components to digestion. What happens then is we want to look for in our office, is your brain getting clear communication down to your body in those areas or not? That might be influencing digestion. So what we have here is an example of a young boy that came in about 5 years old and was having a lot of constipation issues. And you can see here what we want to see when his brain is sending messages down to his body. We want to see these white bars. That is where those nerve channels that I just showed you on the other picture, that's where they're getting good messages out to the body. If there's any stress on those nerves, it's going to show up as the colors on this scan. So if we zoom in here, we've got mild, moderate, severe is green, blue, and red. So in this kiddo's case, you can see down low a lot of interference on those low nerves, which just happen to be this very low set here that I just pointed out that go to the intestine. So no wonder he dealt with constipation. The good news is, as we brought him through care, this was his second scan, his follow-up scan, and you can see things clearing out really well. That's allowing his brain to communicate those good messages down to his body. This is a scan of an infant when he was very young. Let me look here. It looks like, based on his birth, he was just a couple months old when we did this scan. And you can see here, those low down nerves are actually pretty good, but he was also dealing with a lot of constipation. After his first adjustment, he had a blowout diaper because he had been stored up so long. But you can see here in his case, that focus was in that upper neck. That, going back here, is this nerve in green that's going to go down to the stomach as well as all the way down to the intestine. So by finding where that areas of stress are in the nervous system and by adjusting those areas, we're able to open up the flow between the brain and the body and get that digestive system back on track. And the good news with this is that with what we do is it doesn't it prevents you from having to go down the road of, do I do Miralax? Do I do a suppository? Do I do prune juice or pear juice? Do I have to put a certain food in maybe because they have diarrhea and they're going too much and I got to slow it down? And it gives a little ease for you as the parent to try to have to manage day to day, week to week. What's my kiddo eating? Is it going to slow him down? Is it going to speed him up? What's the result going to be? And have to kind of micromanage things, because our bodies are designed pretty amazing to be able to digest food properly and be able to figure things out on its own. So if there is a stress in the nervous system, if something is blocking those nerve channels, that prevents the body's inborn ability to regulate and control things on its own. And if that's happening, it makes your work a lot tougher. However, if we open those nerve channels to get things flowing the way they should, it makes your work a lot easier because you don't have to micromanage what your kiddo's doing. So when we do those scans, the good news is when we get an idea of what nerves are under stress, then we show you with this nerve chart here when you come in the office. And this is similar to the chart with all these nerves. It's just more writing to be able to identify what's going on. So as you can see, when the brain is sending messages down, these nerves in that upper neck affect that vagus nerve. That's why digestion shows up there. Aside from lower down digestion, this can be more common with reflux or GERD, if you or your kiddo have experienced that. When we go to this middle floor, That's these nerves in yellow here. Major digestive center because the stomach's in that category. As I said, that middle layer, sometimes you get more stomach pain, some indigestion feeling. And then the lower floor, these nerves here go to the intestine, the small intestine and the large intestine. So there's the gas, pain, bloating, constipation, something more relevant to adults if you're dealing with Crohn's or IBS, diarrhea is in that category, and even gluten and casein intolerance is in that category. Because what we find is if your digestive system isn't working optimally, you're going to be more likely to have sensitivities to different foods. So that's why we recommend, kind of regardless of where you're at in that journey, is if there is stress to your nervous system, it's going to be a really tough road, right? If we see this stress, this is more small intestine, this is large intestine for that kiddo that I mentioned before, if that's happening, it's going to feel like you're battling uphill the whole time because there's this underlying layer area that needs to be addressed before you can really see the results that you're looking for. So if you are dealing with the digestive issues, constipation issues, please know it's something we see a lot of in our office. We get really good results with if there's an interference, a stress on the nervous system that shows up on the scans. So if you're interested in seeing if that's a good next step for your kiddo, if you're in the Twin Cities area, please reach out. We are happy to help you, happy to see what the scans show to say, yep, there is a digestive component there or not. And that way, at least you have the information to know what your next step should be. And we love helping families thrive. We love helping kiddos get off to that good foot so they're growing healthy and growing strong. And we love really getting to the root of health issues so your life can be easier. So please reach out, and we are here to help.